In this tutorial, we're going to go through the process of attaching a human IK rig to our skinned character. For this process, you need a skeleton and a character or a geometry for a character skinned to said skeleton, and that is it. You should not be using the rigged version of your character for this demo, for this tutorial. For assignment 3, the intent is that you're using your skinned skeleton, which is essentially what you would have submitted for assignment 1B. So please make sure that that's the version of the file you're working with. If your character already has controls, they will essentially conflict with what Human IK is trying to do, because Human IK is going to generate its own Mocap ready rig for you based on a skeleton definition. So what we're going to go through in this video is how to set up the skeleton definition and how to activate and create the Human IK rig so that you're ready for Mocap, either retargeting or modification. So first things first, I've already got the menu I need open here, but if you don't know where to find it, you need to activate the Human IK menu set. To get there, make sure you're in the rigging tool set. Go to the skeleton menu and click on the Human IK button at the bottom, and that will load this toolbar. There is an order of operations here. You can create a skeleton, create a control rig, create a character definition, which are the three that we're going to worry about. Create a custom rig mapping, which is more advanced, but to be honest with you, using this command set or this tool set, you can actually define a custom rig and plug it into Human IK, but it's a little bit more advanced than I want to get into for this series. But if you wanted to explore getting your custom rig mocap ready, then this is what you would have to do some research into. The quick rig tool, if you don't have a skinned character yet and you don't have a skeleton yet, if you've just got geometry, you can use quick rig to create a skeleton and a basic skin with pretty much a very simple user interface. It gives you a decent starting point. You'd still probably have to tweak your skin and all that sort of stuff, but we're already beyond that at this point. We've already created our own skeleton and skinned it, so we don't need to worry about that either. So for our purposes, what we should be clicking on here is the create character definition. We've got a skeleton, we've got a skin. We can't create the control rig until the character definition is done, so we're going to go ahead and do that first. So create character definition will bring us to the character definition page. Now I've mentioned in the past, and I've actually had it as a requirement in the assignments for 1A and 1B. I've asked for you guys to follow the Human IK naming standard. Now I've intentionally only somewhat followed the Human IK naming standard, so I can show you essentially how to go about approaching this either with the default names and without. If you did label everything based on the Human IK standard exactly, this next step will essentially take care of itself. If you didn't, or if only some of the joints are correct, which is pretty much what I'm looking at here, then you'll have to do a little bit of manual assignment, but as you're going to see, it's really easy, and it's not anything that any of us are going to have to worry about. If your names are incorrect, it's not going to take very long to update. And you've got two choices. You can either update the names and load the template, or leave the names as they are and manual assign everything, which is the way I'm going to show today for correcting it. So first things first, if we want to attempt to load it as it is, we can go to the load skeleton definition menu here, or button I should say, and it's going to give me a warning. You must select at least one bone in the skeleton. I'm going to select the hips or the root, and I'm going to try that again. And then that will give me this dialog box. So now it's asking me which template do we want to use. So Human IK is the first one. There are a few templates available, but HIK is the one that I'm following right now, and it's what I've asked you guys to follow naming-wise, so we'll stick with that. And just use the default setting and hit OK. And you can see it kind of worked, but didn't. And now there's, like I said, the reason for that is I didn't actually include all the correct names. I intentionally mislabeled something. So let's have a look at the ones that did show up. So for example, if I click on the right shin, you can see that's called right leg, and the bone is called right leg. So it was able to find it, and if we look here, sure enough, it's called right leg. However, that's incorrect, because when I look at my hierarchy, I got a right leg, but I've also got a right knee. So what's actually happened, because this just the automatic version of this just goes by naming conventions, because I labeled my right leg, it just assumed, oh yeah, right leg for human IK standard is actually the shin or the knee joint, so I'm going to plug it in there. So be very careful with this, because you could think because something here is green that you've got it plugged in properly, but it's because actually you've labeled things incorrectly and things are assigned in the wrong place. So don't be very confident about your names before you trust this. So I am going to modify. Now, if you want to, bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to clear everything. So I'm going to start fresh. Actually, I'm going to clear all, not all in view. If you only clear all in view, it only clears what you can see, and the stuff that's buried away in the shoulders and the spine won't clear. So I'm pretty much at a fresh state here. So now what I can do is if I hover over these, I can see what names it's expecting. Right leg. So you can see this should be right upper leg. So right up leg, left up leg. That's not what I've got here. I've got left leg and then left knee. So really, my right leg should be the second one, and the first one, the top joint, should be right up leg. Oops. So on and so forth. So I could go through this and just rename everything and give it the correct names ahead of time, and then when I load my definition, it will load correctly. However, you can also fill this out manually. So that's what I want to show you mainly today. I'm going to correct my left leg while I'm at it. But it honestly doesn't matter, because I've decided I'm going to show you how to do it manually. But just as an example, now that I've fixed those names, if I load this again, so I'll select the hips, oops, load the definition, hit OK. Now you can see that right up leg is assigned, right leg is assigned, right foot is assigned. So now everything is pretty much, for the leg anyway, is attached properly. Now I'm still missing the hips. That's because hips is actually hips, not hip. So I've labeled it hip. So it's very literal. It's 100% based on spelling and naming conventions. So if you don't have the names exactly right, it won't load them automatically. So like I said, at this point, I could go through and rename everything and try it again until everything loads automatically. If you don't want to bother with renaming everything, then your other option is to use the manual method. And so for the manual method, quite literally, all you have to do is select the joint, and you can select them from the outliner if you want to be careful, or you can select them here. Just make sure you've got the right thing selected. So I like to use the outliner so I know what's what. So with the hip selected, my representation of it, what I decided to call it, I can right click on the hip field and just say assign selected bone. And now it's going to just override it and say, okay, the human IK node hips is going to be represented by the joint called hip. And it is as simple as that. So I can just go through each joint in the system one at a time and do it that way. The other option is to double click on the joints in the definition field. When I double click on it, now it's in selection mode, and I can just single click on the correct joint in the viewer, and that will assign it. One cool thing, if you've got right and left defined in your naming, it is smart enough to automatically pick up left and right. So you should only have to do one arm and one leg, and the other should automatically pick up. So if I do the double click on the shin, grab that joint, whatever it's named, and you can see it assigns it. So whether you've named it correctly or not, you can see that getting this definition set up is going to be pretty quick regardless. It should only take 5 minutes even if you have to do it manually. So I'll just continue down. So I'll go left foot, double click. I like the double click method personally. Now the left foot is assigned. I'm just going to go to a side-ish view. I'm going to open up my first sub menu. So here we've got our optional joints. So pretty much everything you see here is required. All the ones that are in this level. Anything that's in the sub menu are optional. So I don't actually have toes, but I do have one joint representing a toe. So I'm going to use my toe base to apply my actual toe joint. So I'm going to double click on toe base, left toe base, choose that. Now if I had toes, obviously I would assign them as such. For the spine, there's only actually one spine joint required. Whatever your next one is after the hips, that one is a must. The others, believe it or not, are optional, but you should include them if you've created them. So I'm going to open up my sub menu. So you start from the bottom and work your way up. So this one is the next joint in line. This one is the next joint. And this one is the next joint. Do not include the neck. That is separate. So stop at the last spine joint before the neck. So I've only got 3 secondary spine joints plus the primary one. Now for the arms, left arm, that's going to be this one here. Left forearm is going to be this one here, obviously. And then left hand is going to be whatever is attached to the wrist. Now, once again, if you do have fingers, they all go here. There's also a finger base. If you've created a special joint to anchor your fingers to before you attach it to the wrist, then that will get anchored here, so on and so forth. So again, you've got the ability to have some extra joints, but at the basic requirement for fingers, generally the 3 knuckle joints are fine. If you don't have them, it will still work, but you do have to plug in at least the wrists. For the shoulder, there's an option here for 2 shoulder joints. We only actually have 1, so I'll use the base, the one on the inside here. Double click, choose your shoulder / clavicle. That is done. And now the neck and the head are actually both optional, believe it or not. Oh, sorry, that's a lie. The neck is optional, but the head is required. So I'll go in here. Now we've only got 1 neck joint. You can see we could have a whole bunch. Just double click on, when you've only got 1, you just start at the bottom, assign the neck, jump out, double click on the head, assign the head, and we're pretty much good to go. Now there's 2 things that we still need to worry about. One, I got these yellow joints here with an exclamation point giving me a warning. And 2, I've got a reference. I'll take care of the reference first. The reference is actually optional. However, I do highly recommend that you include it for a number of reasons. Now, the reference can be literally any node. It could be a locator if you want to see it. That's usually what I recommend using. So I'm going to go into the Create menu. I'm going to create a locator. That'll get created at the center of the grid, which is perfect. And all you want to do is label your locator reference. This is like the Mocap equivalent of a God node. You could call it that if you wanted to. You could call it the God node, whatever makes most sense to you. But I'm going to call it reference, which is what they expect it to be called. And then quite literally, you just parent whatever your master joint is for the skeleton. For us, it's the hip, or whatever you labeled it, and parent that to the reference node. So the reference becomes the kind of character master, and then everything else is stashed inside of that. And then double click on the reference and choose that locator as your reference. Simple as that. Again, that is optional, but I do highly recommend it because it's the easiest way to move your character within the scene while maintaining the mocap data connection. So you can rotate, scale, move, do anything like that with your character, and the mocap data will stick to him, or her, or it, depending on whether you've got a human, creature, animal, whatever the case may be. So again, add a reference, parent your character's hip node to it, and make sure it's at the center of the grid, and drop it into the reference. Now, these yellow indicators. This is pretty much telling you that your character is, if you go to the next stage, it will give you something, but it's not going to work. One very important thing for human IK, I'm going to go to the front view to demonstrate this, is your character needs to have a pretty much a perfect T pose. It cannot be an A pose. So since you've already got your character skin, that's no big deal, but do not go to the next step until your arms are raised. Now, depending on a few factors, not sure why mine are being cranky. Usually, once you get into the T pose, these will turn green again. I'm wondering if my definition is actually incorrect. Because even though my arm's auto-assigned, I'm not... Like, left up arm, no, that's correct. Human IK, no, left arm. Oh, actually, there is a mistake here. So, yeah, that is going to be an issue too. So, I'm going to actually clear out the arm definition. Clear, 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 clear. And I'm going to add these two back in because the auto chose the wrong joint because I had the name labeled incorrectly. So now let me triple check. Human IQ left arm, that's correct. That's correct. Now it's still giving me the yellow warning. That could be a glitch. I've seen that happen before, but in all honesty, don't worry about it. Yellow is just a warning. I'm guessing the majority of you guys, just going to try it again. I'm going to go back to my bind pose for a second. And I'm just going to try rotating those up again. See if this time if it fixes it. So, no, I've still got the yellow warnings. However, if we come down here where it says status, that tells you what the warnings are. It says the right arm doesn't seem to be parallel to the x-axis. My right arm is currently 100% parallel to the x-axis. X is this way. My arm is this way. So don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm hoping for you guys it'll turn green and it'll look nice, but in the end, this honestly doesn't matter. It's just a warning, and if you are confident the warning that it's giving you is incorrect, you can ignore it. It'll still work. But you do not want to leave it in the A pose. If you leave your character in the A pose, you will build in an offset, which you don't want to do. The character's arms won't match up with the animation correctly. So when it essentially copies the animation data and transfers it to your character, it's assuming that your character's home position is this perfect T-pose. And if it isn't, your animations won't match up. Simple as that. I am going to unbend the elbows a little bit. You don't actually have to, but I'm just going to make them a bit straighter. I'm going to set the Y rotation to 25 degrees for my character and 25 degrees so that they're the same. I wonder if my arms are rotated forward a little bit. Again, I've got a feeling it's just a program glitch. Yeah, they might be. I'm just going to try excuse me, rotating. They're off by a few degrees, but not much. No, I'm not going to worry about it. I've done this enough to know it's not going to matter. Again, this is just, if this was red, then you panic. Then there's something wrong. There's either a joint missing, but the yellow is just a warning, and it's forcing you to triple check that these are parallel. You can see that mine are. So even though the auto system is not picking it up, I don't know why. Doesn't matter. If you know that they're parallel, that is fine. So I am going to go on to the next step. So once you've got your character definition plugged in, the next step is to create the control rig. And the control rig will auto-generate based on the definitions that you've plugged in. And once you've got the control rig done, you could either A, start hand animating the character using just basic keyframing techniques that you've learned already, or B, you can plug in mocap data. So to create a control rig, there's a few ways. You can do it from the menu under here. Oh, actually, they don't have the create option in here anymore. You can edit the control rig from in here, but it looks like to create it, you do have to use the button here, which is fine. So go ahead and create control rig with this character. And what it's going to do is it's going to generate an FK-IK rig for the entire body, plug it all in, and you can see it's got basic controls. And yeah, I now have the ability to pose this character. You've got this tool menu here, this selection tool, which is where might be easiest to select some things, but you can see it's pretty much a standard rig. Undo that, and yeah, I can make my selections here. So if I want to bend the elbow, I can click the elbow here and rotate it. If I want to grab the IK, it's this ring here for the arms. So one thing you will notice is that the human IK rig, I just noticed some skinning issues that I missed. Sloppy. I'm going to ignore it for now. But rigging wise, you can see it's got IK and FK built in. You don't actually have to switch IK and FK to set keyframes and pose. Normally, if you wanted to switch between IK and FK, you'd have to go to an IK FK switch and swap it. In this case, I actually don't have to do that. I can actually just select the joint directly. So these yellow joints, that's your FK skeleton essentially. So if I select one of the yellow joints and rotate it, that is FK mode. If I grab one of the rings and slide it, then that's IK mode. It kind of does both without a switch, which is kind of handy. So you could keyframe an animation with this rig from scratch, or create poses. For anyone who wants to create characters but doesn't want to rig characters, you could use this tool to generate quick rigs in Maya for posing. And this, even if you don't want to set keyframes, you can just make poses for rendering purposes very quickly and easily using this rig without having to rig anything manually yourself, which again definitely is a time saver. I'm going to file and save here. I'm going to call it Human IK. Okay, so that is pretty much it. Once you're at this stage, your character is either A, ready for mocap, or B, like I said, ready for keyframe animation, or really a combination of both. So that is pretty much all there is to it. I'm going to stop this video here. In the next video, we will learn how to assign or choose and assign some mocap data so that we can retarget data from the files that we choose onto our own characters. One of the greatest things about Human IK is that it's because it's a standardized format. Um, any animation you can find online that was created using this format will be compatible with any other human IK character. So built into Maya, they've got a partnership with a company as of Maya 2021 called Rococo Studios, who's a mocap company, really. They sell mocap suits. And they have a whole library available with well over 100 free animations that anyone can play around with. And so we're gonna use that for this assignment. If any of you are familiar with Mixamo, any animation you can find on Mixamo, also, if you save it out as an FBX, follows the Human IK standard and could also be grafted in and retargeted to your character as well. So you could, if you want to explore what Mixamo has to offer from an animation standpoint, you could grab your files from there. So yeah, either way, the process is the same. So that's what we'll look at in the next video.